Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 172 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Valerie Rubin joining us, and Valerie helps her clients heal from an anxious attachment style so they can become a match for healthy, secure love. The owner of Freedom with Valerie LLC, she works with clients on situations that include relationships that are narcissistic and emotionally unavailable, chronic anxiety, and panic attacks, which for her personally have manifested in physical symptoms such as joint pain, adrenal fatigue, and acne. Through her anxious to secure method, Valerie works to address the root cause of any anxiety issue and release, not manage, it in a 12-week process. The CEO of your life is something that we talk about in today's episode, and that means that you have your own chief executive officer. It's yourself. Being able to talk about these areas, talk about how she has overcome her own life journey, is something that Valerie not only was really open about today, but really helped us to understand how some people, even through chance encounters, can create manifestations of our own. Whether we think we have to do it with somebody else or not is really a test for today's episode, because Valerie challenges the status quo of what it means that even though we go through some of the most toughest of things, we can challenge it. We can be in charge. And that even when we feel heartbroken and we need to walk away, we know that if we can just heal, even if we're able to just heal one person, we can heal the whole entire world, which you're going to understand a little bit about why I'm saying that. But also, throwing in the towel, no matter how tough it might be, is not the answer. I have to say that this is probably the most influential interview that I've ever done, not just because of the impact that it had on me personally, but I think you're going to see why Valerie, of all people that I've had on this show, will redefine what you might think of, especially when it comes to coaching, and how it might help you overcome what you might have been through in the past, but also how you're able to see greatness in your own life if you're just willing to take charge. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Valerie Rubin. Valerie, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Oh, hi, Joshua. I'm so glad to be here today to share stuff that's been on my heart, speaking from the heart. And I'm so grateful to be sharing my story and different insights on how to heal anxious attachment, dating, trauma, all the things we'll go over. But thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm super excited that you're here too. And I find that you are one of these package type of individuals that I like having on the show because we can go in a variety of different angles. So thanks so much for doing this. And I've already let the listeners know a little bit about you, but there's something that really stuck out to me that I feel is a great starting point that I normally don't start with right away. So I'm actually going to go right for the jugular, go really deep. And a lot of things that you've talked about, even in your bio, was about suffering from chronic anxiety, panic attacks, not being available. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit of your perspective / story as to what you were exactly going through and what led you into starting a business, which for my listeners is called the Freedom with Valerie LLC.
Yes, you got it. So I'll just start with a little bit of my story. I really deeply struggled for a few decades of my life and up until I was 21 with crippling anxiety, chronic. And what started to happen was it started to lead into deep health issues. Symptoms looked like fibromyalgia, but every doctor, no demand, said that there was nothing wrong. I'm too young to be feeling this way. It started with chronic headaches, then neck pain, then shoulder pain, then stomach aches, and then I felt like a 90-year-old woman in a 20-year-old's body. And then I also had adrenal fatigue. And on my website, for those who haven't seen my website, and even on my Instagram, there's a before and after of me before I started doing this deeper healing work. And my skin is completely cleared out from that. I look like a completely different person. But getting to my point, I really deeply struggled with chronic anxiety. And then I did talk therapy. I did meditation. I exercised all the time. I did all the quote unquote right things. And nothing was moving the needle for me in regards to my anxiety and overthinking. And I felt like such a victim of my life. I couldn't calm down. I couldn't ever fully stop worrying and ever surrender in my life. And I felt like my body was betraying me. And so for me, I then literally came across a woman on TikTok who was a rapid transformational therapist. It's another form of hypnotherapy that really gets to the root cause of a lot of health issues, a lot of mental issues. So this woman specialized in anxiety. Literally after one session, it felt like 10 years of therapy in one session. I did 6 weeks working with this woman. After that, all of my anxiety became much more manageable. It greatly reduced, and then all my health issues literally vanished and went away. I had zero chronic pain. I'm chronic pain free. I'm able to move with ease. I had to take off years of my life from lifting weights, from doing things that I thought would inflame me more. So that's really how my story got started. And then I went into the coaching world and started my own business because I was going to get my PhD in clinical health psychology and clinical psychology, but I realized that I didn't want to be a traditional talk therapist because of the huge transformation that I went through. And so because of that, I decided to go the untraditional route, started a business, started to train in this form of therapy called rapid transformational therapy and hypnotherapy. And it completely transformed my entire life. As I was going through my journey and working with more and more clients, I then specialized in generalized anxiety disorder and chronic anxiety. And I was so fascinated by hypnotherapy, but it still wasn't getting as deep. Some clients needed who had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of childhood trauma. It only helped to some degree. And you can't just regress people every single week necessarily. So what I ended up doing was I started to receive somatic therapy sessions on myself through different colleagues of mine. I did something called brain spotting, somatic IFS, also known as parts work, which we can go deeper on, and then nervous system regulation. So to kind of backtrack a little bit, I went through all this anxiety, reduced, and then I met an ex-partner of mine. We started dating, and it ended up being a very toxic relationship and something called a trauma bond. And so I was in a relationship, a very serious one with a covert narcissist, and then all my anxiety really came back because anxiety is a messenger that something is off. And then I discovered somatic therapy, brain spotting, and nervous system regulation, things that were a lot more trauma informed, that were actually working with the body, like where these relationship patterns were stemming from, what caused me to stay in this relationship when I rationally knew that I wasn't supposed to stay in. And so because of that, I then realized all my clients had a similar problem with their chronic anxiety. They had something called an anxious attachment style. They had chronic anxiety in relationships. They had a fear of abandonment, low self-esteem. It created this blueprint, this anxious attachment blueprint that made it hard for people to leave these types of relationships. And this is what actually caused people chronic anxiety. The people who weren't getting better, it was because of these dynamics in relationships. And so then I healed my own anxious attachment style, becoming a master in somatic therapy. And then I decided to switch my niche to anxious attachment because that was really at the root of where all this was coming from. So that's really how my evolvement started to happen, really my soul journey, and how I've gotten to the place I have today and why I started my business and why I started creating with Valerie LLC.
Wow. There is a lot of stuff with that. And I was very patient because there was just so many questions that came up through that I want
Mhm.
to ask you. And I want to start with the physical aspects because especially with things that happen in our lives, I remember growing up too, I would have these acne breakouts too because of how much stress I had and things of that nature. And even as a male, I know that things are different from a body chemistry perspective from a female, but as I've gotten older, it's strange to me how I've realized that stress and anxiety, all those different things can cause a variety of different shifts in the way in which you respond to things. I'm kind of curious, did that impact your self-image growing up, especially with all these different physical ailments? I imagine that you were bullied a lot. Were you?
Actually, that's one thing I didn't really experience was bullying. I had this mask that everything was perfect. In my hypnotherapy school, something that I learned that I teach all my clients is we play 4 roles in order to stay safe and to get attention unconsciously. It's 1, so 4 different roles. The perfect one, the perfect child, the chronically ill child, the caretaker, and the difficult/rebellious one. So for me, I really overlapped and shifted into different ones. But for me growing up, I was the perfect child. So no one really knew other than close friends and family what was truly going on with my physical symptoms and what was happening. Growing up, I just really had these deep core beliefs that I wasn't good enough. Not because that was the innate truth of who I was. It was because I experienced a lot of trauma. My father was a narcissist, as well as my mom was very emotionally unavailable. And one of my brothers is autistic. So it was just very chaotic, and my parents weren't available to meet my needs. So because of that, I started to internalize beliefs that I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable. It created a lot of these fears of abandonment. And that's really where a lot of this stress was coming from because those needs weren't being met. And I didn't know how to process my emotions because my parents didn't. And so if that's unlearned, of course, all that stress is going to accumulate in your body. And so physical ailments and physical problems all stem down to one simple statement. And that is when we are in a state of fight or flight, our bodies cannot heal in that state. We can only heal in a rest and digest state. That's the parasympathetic nervous system, right? We have our sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, then our parasympathetic, which is calm, rest, and digest. If we're not in that parasympathetic nervous system state, we will accumulate health issues. And that's the law. Our body can't heal in that state.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and why a lot of therapists, even that I've worked with over the years and even have talked to on the show, even involve a component of you have to take a step back. You have to reflect on it in some way. And I like how you said it because I haven't heard it that way before of rest and digest. Because of processing that, we tend to find different answers to some of the things that we might always go to as our default response or our defense mechanism. So, with that said, what was your defense mechanism even growing up then? Because I love the fact that you weren't bullied. So, thanks for saying that. Because I think for some people, when we hear that, we think that there might be an external influence. So, it was more, from what I'm hearing, internal. So, what was your defense mechanism essentially that you went to? And outside of meeting the person that helped you change that, what was that switch for you personally that made that light bulb turn on that you wanted to change?
Yes, such great questions. The light bulb moment for me, and this really ties into my work now, even more so than the anxiety, was even still, like, even with the deep chronic anxiety and physical health issues, I felt I was doing all the right things. So I felt that I wasn't in crisis and that, like, I was okay. I was honestly just curious about what this woman was doing. But the flip of the switch for me was I figured this out a month before I saw her. But this was when I was like, I really need to attack this at the root. This was like, I don't know, going into being my 4th relationship or 3rd relationship. It was very a hot and cold relationship. And I felt like my self esteem was at the mercy of his text messages. I was so anxious. I remember even like needing advice from my brother. Oh, I would ask him every hour, oh, do you think he likes me based on this? Oh, do you think he likes me? Because my self-esteem was very based on how other people perceive me because both of my parents are highly codependent. They have zero sense of self. And so I learned that as well. But going back to your first question of my defense mechanisms. So my defense mechanisms were like being in flight, aka I was super effing anxious and worried all the time. And then I was also the perfect one. I masked everything. I suppressed everything because I didn't want unconsciously to add stress to my already stressed out family that had an autistic brother who was screaming, having tantrums every day. And then my father, who was a narcissist, and he had chronic health issues. He has multiple sclerosis. The last thing I wanted to do was add to the stress. So I pushed everything down. And that's really where all my physical health issues really came from as well. Every thought that we think has a physical reaction in our bodies. So those were my defense mechanisms. And that was my flip of the switch moment of when I decided I needed to change.
I find that to be unique because for some people, when they go through what you've gone through, which I hear myself in you a lot because I grew up autistic. I had no idea, Valerie, until about a couple years ago when I got a diagnosis being an adult that I suffered through that. A lot of light bulbs went on for me. And I know for some of the things that you described, I could describe some of my parents' relationship to a T as it relates to that too. And I feel that in the culture that we grow up in, we sort of gravitate towards those same people because we think that those are influences. And I've had to do a lot of work to kind of separate myself from that. So I'm wondering, what was the work that you had to do to separate yourself out? In other words, I know you said you found this and you started doing that. What do you think was the most helpful moment for you to kind of be like, aha, this is what I need to do to separate myself from that? I'm wondering if you could describe what that process was just very quickly.
Absolutely. And yeah, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that diagnosis. That's a big thing when we've gone our whole life and we think we're this way, but everything shifts when you figure those things out about yourself. And so for me, something that really shifted everything, honestly, this was even like a few months ago. I was working with my coach around this because I'm new in the dating space. I've been single for 8 months. I guess that's somewhat new. Not really. But she was like, listen, you're the CEO of your business. You're the CEO of your fucking dating life. I'm like,
Mm.
because I had the pattern of settling. Oh, I don't need someone to be quote unquote perfect, but I was negating this high standards that I knew weren't reflected of me. My last relationship, both of us settled. Truly, I think that to be true because both of us had a fear of not being chosen, all these things that I haven't really shared openly about as much. But for me, I feel like two things were flip of the switch for me. So I guess three. What I just shared with the standards. That's why I've also been healthily single, securely single. I've not been settling and I'm super picky, not in an avoidant way, but literally like, this is my standards. This is what I want. And I won't settle for anything less than that. Because going back to the cultural aspect, we are taught that, especially as women, that we need to get married by a certain age in order to be worthy. We have to have kids by a certain age to be worthy. All of these things and these cultural aspects of you don't leave people that you love. And that was exactly like my parents have been in 5 days, they'll be married 35 years. They definitely should have gotten divorced many times. They should have been divorced. But going back to other two light bulb moments for me was when I left the narcissist in 2022. And then after my recent partner and I broke up because he was very avoidant. But at that time, I didn't realize there were still aspects of me that were unhealed. So I'm grateful that that breakup brought things to light. And I just remember our recent breakup. I'm trying to make this as short as possible, but our recent breakup, what ended up happening was he was like, we were getting very serious. We were going to move in together. I was even going to move states to be with him because we were long distance. And what ended up happening is he really self-sabotaged it. He didn't feel safe in continuing the relationship because he was very avoidantly attached. So to someone who's avoidantly attached, closeness feels like suffocation. And so what ended up happening is we broke up and I just remember sobbing. I felt so like really heartbroken. It was out of a movie what our breakup looked like as he dropped me off at the airport and I was crying, begging to him, please don't do this to anyone else. Make sure that you heal. Obviously, he may not, but that was also a flip of the switch moment that I needed to also clean up my side of the street of what parts of me have been contributing to this. So those are my answers. But going back to your last point is our dating choices are honestly, very unconscious until you do the unconscious work. Like you said, we will repeat the same patterns. If your parents were codependent, if they were trauma bonded, if they were like very unstable, your nervous system will find safety in that familiarity of them leaving you, of them being unavailable, of inconsistency. And so when you do meet them, you might know these red flags, but they don't ring your alarm bells, or you justify it by saying, oh, I'll change them, blah, blah, blah. It's all coming from your inner child and your nervous system finding what's familiar. And why I've been able to shift out of this box of dating emotionally unavailable people is through the work that I've done. Really, really regulating my nervous system so that I'm not looking for another person to rescue me. Learning how to feel safe in my body so that I'm not meeting anyone who doesn't feel safe in their body. All of these things are so important. And ever since I've done the work that I've done, the somatic work, I've become emotionally available to myself. So anyone who's emotionally unavailable, I instantly get repulsed. So that's my whole long spiel. I know I said so much, but
I have to think about the fact that for me, there was a time in my life that I was emotionally unavailable for a variety of different people. And I know the context of what you've talked about just the last few minutes has been about in the dating scene. But even for me, I think about all the past relationships that even I've had and how toxic I've created it because of being emotionally unavailable, trying to hurt myself and not even working on my own shit to then be able to work with other people that we're supposed to be in this together. And even to this day, Valerie, I'm even working on some of those things. And I know that I'm not perfect. I'm totally not even close to it. And I know that there's so much work that even for people like you and I that have grown up in these environments, we find ways in which even when we get back on, we have to get back off for a moment because we realize that those are the things that we're still learning, we're still processing, and we're finding and rediscovering. And the way that you said it, it just speaks some clarity to me. And I'm sure for many people that struggle with that, especially when it comes to not only narcissism, but just feeling acknowledged, right? It just creates that anxiousness to really get to the heart of it. And speaking of getting to the heart of it, I want to spend some time on your business. So, Freedom with Valerie LLC, we started this to help others, to help clients with their relationships, to overcome even personally some of the things that you've said so far. Why though? Why give back? I mean, isn't this about you and wanting to work on yourself? Don't you think you've had all this opportunity to continue doing that? Why give the time of day for somebody else? What's your drive to wanting to help others?
that's a fabulous question. And truly, it feels bigger than me. Every time I struggle with any challenge in my business, or I'm in a slow month, or I'm in a tough period, it's really just a soul calling. It's something that it felt like I couldn't not do this. It just felt exactly like that. And I've always been so fascinated with the brain helping people heal. I've always just loved helping people and being that support for people. And so it felt like such a disservice to not be doing this. It was just kind of like, well, I have to. And my first coach that I worked with, that was the first person that I worked with, who was the hypnotherapist. And she told me, and I remember I had some sort of business challenge or something going wrong. And she said, people need me. This is bigger than me. It's not about me anymore. And ever since she said that, it was like a flip of the switch that fully rings true. Every time I have felt like maybe I even want to throw in the towel, because business is fucking challenging. Anyone who says that a business is easy is lying. There's going to be challenges. Every time, God always shows me a way through. It's so much bigger than me. And then each client I meet, it's literally like I'm talking and helping with my past self. It feels like I never want to do anything else in this entire world. And I say that with certainty. One of my previous partners asked me, if it was your last day on earth, what would you want to do? And half the day I was like, I would love to see clients and help people, because it's not just about helping one person. After I work with them and they're healing and they're working through their traumas, then they're not passing that down to their kid. Now they're not projecting it onto their partner. Now their work is better. They're able to show up better in the world. It's not just helping one person, it's helping thousands. And in the Jewish religion, for example, the Torah says that once you heal one person, you heal the world. And I fully, deeply resonate with that. So that's really my answer, is it's just something that always has felt right for me. And that's really where a lot of my chronic pain started to increase was years ago before I started my business. I was teeter-tottering between getting my PhD and starting my business. And I had the worst physical pain. It felt like my body was screaming at me. It felt like it was on fire when I was applying and doing interviews for PhD programs and master's programs. And I've got into many. And then once I decided to do my training and make one of the biggest investments I made, which was $17,000 right out of college at the time, I had goosebumps all down my body. And after I clicked buy, after I started my hypnotherapy training, and it literally felt as if God was working through me. It felt like this was a yes from God. All my pain was gone. It felt like the biggest yes from my heart and my soul. And I completely still resonate with that to this very day.
You saying what you said, it defines a lot for me what this journey has meant for me and my own business, which my listeners know that this almost 2-year journey for me, Your Speaking Voice, has been about not only finding the confidence, determination, relationships to help others, but I want people to have that voice, to be able to share it to the world. And when you said, even from the Torah, about healing yourself first, or even one person, that you can heal the world, I feel that for the longest time, I had to heal myself. So when I hear this, feel a sense of two things: the conviction of wanting to do this because you know it's the right thing to do. But the other side of it is to know that you willingly are pushing aside was supposed to be maybe your path. That wasn't your path anymore. You decided to say no. And to find the strength in that, I think, is a true test, a true courage, if you will, of being able to truly speak from the heart. With that said, you are working with people that come from all kinds of different backgrounds, and they might not have had the same similar experiences. What does it mean to you to work with those types of people, to help them see that other side, to allow them to have that healing? You call it healing. I would call it the best version of themselves. What makes that bridge happen for you and that client to be better than they ever had been?
Mm. A really simple answer is connecting them to their divinity, connecting them to their truth, connecting them to their body. Because when you're connected to your body, when you're connected to your emotions, and when you can build up that self-worth that was never learned in the first place, that's the bridge, truly. That's the bridge from you to your higher self or best self, whatever you want to call it. It's all within you. It's all within you. There's so many different realities here. And there is a reality where you're securely attached, you're in your healthy relationship, you feel joy, you feel happiness, you feel like you can surrender even amidst the chaos and the craziness that today's world bestows upon us. And I also feel like we're all one and we're all the same. Even though I may have slightly different experiences, I feel like almost every single one of my clients has had somewhat similar experiences to me. And I feel like it's like that's why I've been called to show up in this soul mission in this way, because I'm able to show them that there is a way out. I'm here to show them that you can get through your hardest of hard times. You truly, truly can. Even when your mind tells you that it's not possible, even when your mind wants to throw in the towel, even when your mind is telling you all these stories that you're not good enough, that you should die, all of this shame, it's not fucking yours. It's literally not yours. And I was literally working with a client on this before I hopped on here, of her having so much shame and she felt not good enough and like the worst person, like a bad person whenever she made a mistake. We get down to it when we're doing a somatic therapy session. It really had nothing to do with her at all. It literally was an internalized belief because her mom wasn't paying attention to her. Her mom was neglecting her. So a child doesn't understand that their mother isn't paying attention to them. So instead of hating their mother, they had to hate themselves in order to survive. So it's your shame, you're not good enough stories, I'm unlovable. All these stories are not you. You're not your higher self. When you can unblock yourself from these beliefs, see it from that space, when you can do that inner healing, you naturally become your best self. You naturally become the higher version of yourself, if you want to call it that. That's this version of you who you're striving to be. That's who you are right now. how can you connect to them?
I sit here and I reflect on even my own life because even at this time of this recording, even for my listeners, I have to disclose the fact that I am struggling with that. I am struggling with the hate that I have put for myself, even after all these years. But I realize too that the hate isn't from me. It was from the circumstances of everything that I've been surrounded with. And I know that those circumstances no longer exist. So now is about changing a mindset that no longer has to be present. We're almost at the end of our time, Valerie, and I want to ask you one final question. You say all these things. You have worked the work, if you will.
Mhm.
You've put in that job to be able to do what you need to do to help others. What would you say is one thing that you can inspire my listeners today to have that healthy, secure love that they deserve? What's one thing that they could start doing?
One thing that I highly recommend you start doing is learning how to become emotionally available to yourself. How do you do that? One simple thing. I know people hate meditating, and especially if you're a trauma survivor. I also don't love sitting down meditations. A lot of the time, I like walking meditations. But for example, I have one meditation that is working with the body. It's a little bit of a taste of somatic therapy, teaches you how to process your emotions, teaches you how to feel safe in your body, has some breath work in there. If you do that every single day, I guarantee you your entire life will change. Because when you do that and show up for yourself in that way, that's showing to yourself that I care about myself. Even when I'm struggling, I will show up for myself. And then you are becoming emotionally available to yourself. And then you become the securely attached parent that you needed back then. This will reflect in all of your relationships. It will completely transform your life. If you pick out one thing from that, it's doing that. And that meditation is completely free in my link in my bio and my Instagram. I know Joshua is going to put that in the show notes. But yeah, it completely transformed my life. It helped me reduce my own anxiety. That's why I have it completely for free in my Instagram bio, because I want people to experience similar things as I can, because you're never stuck. Life is always changing. Life is always moving. It's a law of the universe that when things go down, they have to go back up. They will. Even if you feel so fucking anxious and you have the worst circumstances in the world, it will get better. Even if it's 5% better, you won't always stay stuck feeling this way. I promise you. Trust me. Take it from me.
Trust and being able to actually work with that. I know that that can be such a struggle, and I'm sure that even people are skeptical, but you're right. It is just about taking that first step. And I appreciate you sharing all this. Thank you for being so open. And I have some more I want to say, but before I do that, to wrap it up, I want to give you the last few minutes, Valerie. I would love for you to pitch your business. I would love for people to know how they can get in contact with you. Maybe they are interested in some coaching work from you. How would they be able to also access some of your social media, especially with Instagram? I'm going to give you the last few minutes to do that.
Yes. So my Instagram is at Heal with Val. So that's HEAL with Val. If you type that on Instagram, I give you so many tips, resources, things to show you how to actually do this work. I have all of that, as well as my podcast. It's called the Anxiety Recovery Podcast by Valerie Rubin. I have amazing experts and guests that share expert advice. They share different insights on how to actually heal from trauma, heal your nervous system. It's like a free hour of therapy every single Thursday. And I love having people on their souls who are also on a similar mission to me to help heal the world, one soul at a time. So many deep things there. I love being on the podcast and I love being on other people's podcasts. Those are some ways you can connect with me. And then I have a 8-week program that shows you step by step how to heal your anxious attachment style. It's called Freedom from Anxious Attachment Blueprint. It's a one-on-one each week. We're doing the work. We're getting through it. It's all my years of therapy, all my years of tools, thousands and thousands of dollars in my own personal development is literally all wrapped up in this 8-week program. So you don't have to wait years for a breakthrough. It's literally in less than 60 days, you will become securely attached.
I am working on so many things I want to say to you. And this is one of these episodes that I have to ask myself the question of, should I be even listening to my own guests? And it's interesting, Valerie, what you've been through. And I even said it earlier. the parallels between what you've been through and what I've been through are strikingly similar. And that the things that you've been through, you have seen that other side. Wow, I'm in the middle of that shit sometimes too, still trying to work through all of that. But what I find to be really fascinating and really a hope, if you will, of your story is that you're paving that path. You're willing to work with people and you're willing to not settle for less anymore. I think that for settling and thinking that you are going to get whatever you want by settling, that's not really true whatsoever. And I think we find that in our professional life, we find that in our personal life, we find that in so many venues. And I have to say, there are things that you've said to us today, even me included, that I'm thinking, where can I go from here? And you gave some of that blueprint today. And I think if anything else, being able to be courageous to share all these things is something that I haven't had in a guest in quite a long time. Thank you for being so open about the variety of aspects that I think many of us can identify and attest to, that if we can overcome those things, not only can we be able to have that love, we can have that ability to find freedom in our lives. So, Valerie, for all those reasons, thanks for being on Speaking from the Heart today. I really enjoyed not just the conversation that we had, but keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great work. And from one coach to another, thank you for continuing to challenge the status quo.
Mm. Thank you, Joshua, for having me on. Thank you for allowing me to literally speak from my heart and share these deeper things, because some of these things I haven't shared publicly. And I just really love what you said as well. I want people to embody freedom, because on the other side of your anxiety, your physical health issues, your chronic pain, your anxious attachment, on the other side of that is freedom. That's literally why my 8-week freedom from anxious attachment blueprint, that's why it's called that. And that's why my business name is called Freedom with Valerie LLC, because I want you all to experience that joy, that freedom, that aliveness, that joy, and that love that's already within us. Already within us. We just need to reconnect with it.
Thanks for reminding us of all of that. And again, thanks for being part of the show. I want to thank Valerie again so much for being part of the show. She really helped me to understand some aspects of my own personal life, which even after the show, I've had a few conversations with her just to get a little bit more of an understanding of her style. And it was really uplifting. It was really encouraging for me. And I think that we all need to learn that even when we go through some of these toughest moments in our life, even when we're going through trauma, pain, frustration, sorrow, depression, anxiety, all these things and so much more, there is hope. Even when we struggle with a variety of different areas, we might be mistreated. We might be really pushed into a corner, whether that's in the physical sense or the mental sense. We can always find hope, even in the smallest of things. And I really love the fact that when Valerie talked about this random TikTok video that she saw, it really changed her life. It changed her perspective. It led into what she's able to do today, which shows you that limitations should not hold you back. Rapid transformation hypnotherapy were just some of the tools in her toolbox that she was able to gain that helped her to not only reduce what was happening in her life, which was crumbling around her, but also reduce the anxiety that she was feeling about it. Even with all the things that we have as tools at our disposal, many people are skeptical of things such as somatic healing, parts work, nervous reductions. But yet, if you have never tried it, don't knock it. You never know what might work for one person over another. And I think that is something that if people are willing to try, if they're willing to put that step towards that direction, why not give it a try? Some people might not even know what those other people might be going through, so that they are judging before that person even tries it. So when you're able to say to somebody, yes, you should explore that, jump on that chance, jump on that opportunity, because of people like Valerie, we are able to have that kind of choice, that we are able to explore that when we don't have the tools or the gifts at our own disposal. When we're able to process that effectively, we're able to become better versions of ourselves. No matter what way you might want to look at it, we can be healed if we're willing to try new things. That's why resting, why we should digest things, how we recover through these different patterns of life will all happen at various stages. We don't even know until we try, as I said earlier. If we are able to try, we can bring at the mercy of someone what it means to unmask, address areas of our life that we would have otherwise not had answers for. I shared with Valerie even after the show about my own diagnosis of autism, being on that spectrum, not realizing that many of the struggles of anxious attachment, depression, all those frustrations really held me back from becoming a best version of myself and still in some form do today. I have to learn, though, that when I am able to embrace some of the tools and techniques that even Valerie has mentioned today, I can become better in my own heart, my own soul. It's allowing me to have that privilege to become able to take charge. What are those standards that I can live by? What should be chosen? What are the things that I should not settle for less? And how I can not feel heartbroken anymore and walk away from the things that are not helping me manifest growth. Those are the things that if I wanted to hire myself as the chief executive officer of my life, those qualifications, those questions would have to be asked during that interview. And I better damn well have an answer for that. Be prepared for what I have to share with it, because I should stay convicted in terms of what I'm able to achieve. And that's what you, my listeners, are able to do if you're willing to take charge of your own life. It's not easy. It means that you might have to push back at some people that are adamant about what direction you should go, how you should feel about any sort of choice that you make, how you are responding to those choices, but how it feels to grow bigger, to help yourself grow in these opportunities, to prosper in ways that you have never seen ever in your life, whether that's in a financial sense or not, might be some of your motivations of wanting to change in the first place. What struck me about Valerie's interview today is when she quoted from the Jewish Torah, saying that if you heal one person, you can heal the world. It started to shake me at the core. Now, you might be asking yourself, Josh, this should be no secret. You've already been sharing this quite a lot in other episodes, including your monologues. I've been following you for over a year and a half. You should know by now that these are the things that you even preach about. But then it started to really strike me, because it's from a religious context that this is coming from. And I'm sure that for many of us, we have skepticism about whether it means that we should be really treating ourselves fairly, why we should be even encouraging each other to become better versions of ourselves. If the religious aspect of this is that we should heal one person so that we can heal the world, why should I take that responsibility? If everybody else is being able to do that, if they're being charged to do that, why should I? Well, I think that in Valerie's story today, if you don't take charge, if you're not willing to even heal yourself, who else is supposed to do that? Your mom? Your dad? Your friends? Your family that are extended beyond your mom and dad? Your brother? Your sister? Who is it going to be? I have to challenge you in that you have to realize that that healing starts solely with you. Let's be real. Even with all the training that you can receive, all the connection to divinity or the religious context, if you want to even put it that way, your self-worth isn't just developed by training. It's not just by creating this context. You have to be able to also practice it. So if you throw in the towel today, if you're not willing to give yourself that answer that you deserve, then of course, shame is going to control you. It will become the precursor to every single decision that you'll make. You won't be able to overcome, and you won't be emotionally available to those that really matter. Because you have to first show up for yourself. That's really a hard pill to swallow. Even for myself, your podcast host, to swallow that pill that if I have to become emotionally available, I have to work on myself first, that's a tall order. That means that I have to let go of some of the things that have been holding me back for so long and stop living in the past. It means that I have to let go. It means that with all these struggles, I have to also realize that I have the inherent power to change the course. If I feel depressed, anxiety, if I'm sick to my stomach, if I can't see very well, hear very well, if I can't feel anything within my fingers, regardless of what it might be, all the different techniques that might be available, including even hypnotherapy, if I'm not willing to take charge of myself, all of this will be for naught. I know that it's very easy for us to just disregard and just move on, to put that into a box and push it aside. That's what most abusers try to do to their victims. So that even then, as I have dealt with clients that have gone through some traumatic things in their life, I've realized that they've put it away because they were never given the opportunity or the equipment to be able to resolve those situations on their own. They weren't the CEOs of their life. They let something else take over that took charge of what they're supposed to be feeling, doing, seeing, feeling, all those things, which is why they did settle for less, which is why they felt heartbroken, which is why that standard in which they were trying to meet could never be met. You might underestimate the power of therapy or coaching, but when you put the two together, it's a manifestation of a force that can't be reckoned with. It's something that even with mercy begs, mercy is for the weak, as one of my most famous actors had once said. But mercy is okay to have. It's okay to go through this, not know all the answers, to feel the way that we are feeling. But if we're able to heal that one person, if we're able to heal the whole entire world through that process, I think that's pretty cool. I think that coolness needs to be rectified again, especially in our society that is grieving, that is hurting, that is going through so much because we're only worried about our own self-worth. Sure, that means you have to work on yourself first, and for many of my episodes, I have preached that, because I think that it all starts with you. But I've also said that when you start with yourself, you must also look around you. You must see what other people are doing. Sometimes it is okay to turn away, especially when those people are very bad influences. It's okay to embrace what you are as an individual. But the moment that you stick with that and you also turn your cheek the other way when someone else is willing to give you something is when shame begins, because you're ashamed of what that other person might be able to contribute to your life. Open up your heart, open up your mind, and see what's around you. If you're willing to overcome, you will become emotionally available. You will be attuned to what's around you, even yourself. And oh yes, you will become the chief executive officer of your life once again. Success isn't defined by all these different things that we're able to do. That's what I thought at one point in my life. But as Valerie has reminded me today, and as many of my other guests have reminded, even you, my listeners, life is not about what you are able to do in the quantity sense, but what you're able to do with quality. If you're able to let go of these struggles, if you're able to create this manifestation in your life, trust me on this. You will become emotionally available. You will overcome all the physical, mental limitations that you once put on yourself. And oh yes, you will enjoy the freedom that you've always deserved. Regardless of what might be holding you back, that anxious attachment or more, just know that people, places, things, and opportunities will keep on walking by until you radically transform if you're willing to share yourself and your heart in more ways than one. If you're able to do that, success will certainly come your way. Thanks for listening to episode number 172 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.